Stop. Only 3% of you are subscribed. If you believe using race as a weapon to avoid consequences is wrong, if you want to see Judge Caprio handle the most explosive accusation ever, hit subscribe right now. A well-dressed black woman walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom with confidence. Designer suit, expensive jewelry, lawyer briefcase. Her name is Denise Montgomery, corporate attorney, 42 years old, drives a BMW 7 Series. Red light violation. Traffic camera caught her. $85 fine. Should be simple. Should take 5 minutes. But from her first sentence, it's clear she has no intention of paying. Your Honor, I'm pleading not guilty. That red light camera was positioned in a predominantly black neighborhood. This is targeted enforcement. Judge Caprio looks up from the file. Miss Montgomery, the red light camera photographs every vehicle that runs the light, regardless of the driver's race. That's what they all say. Comment where you're watching from. Because what happens when this attorney accuses Judge Caprio of racism becomes the most intense courtroom moment you've ever seen. Thursday afternoon, 2:15 p.m., Providence Municipal Court. The bailiff calls case 20,147. Denise Montgomery. Red light violation. Denise approaches the podium. Armani suit, Tiffany necklace, Hermes scarf. Everything about her screams success and confidence. She's carrying a legal pad with notes. Judge Caprio reviews the citation. Miss Montgomery, according to the traffic camera at the intersection of Broad Street and Elmwood Avenue, your vehicle proceeded through the intersection 1.8 seconds after the light turned red. The photograph clearly shows your license plate. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. I contest the validity of this citation on multiple grounds. Judge Caprio nods. Go ahead, explain your grounds. Denise consults her notes. First, the traffic camera system in Providence has been shown to have a higher concentration in minority neighborhoods. This constitutes discriminatory enforcement. Miss Montgomery, traffic cameras are placed at intersections with high accident rates, not based on neighborhood demographics. That's the official explanation, but the data shows otherwise. Do you have this data with you? I can provide it if needed, but that's not my only objection. Judge Caprio waits. Second, I question the accuracy of the timestamp. 1.8 seconds is within the margin of error for these cameras. Miss Montgomery, the cameras are calibrated regularly and certified by the state. The margin of error is 0.2 seconds. You were 1.8 seconds late. That's well beyond any margin. Denise's voice gets sharper. With all due respect, Your Honor, you're not a traffic engineer. You're accepting the state's word without independent verification. The courtroom shifts uncomfortably. She's talking to Judge Caprio like opposing counsel. Before we continue, answer this in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone use race as an excuse to avoid responsibility? Because what Denise says next crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. Judge Caprio's voice remains calm. Miss Montgomery, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I rely on certified expert testimony. The state certifies these cameras. Unless you have evidence of malfunction, the citation stands. I'm challenging the entire system, not just this one camera. That's a legislative issue, not a courtroom issue. You're here to address whether you ran this specific red light. Denise crosses her arms. Fine. Let's see the photo. Judge Caprio pulls it up on the monitor. Clear image. Denise's BMW. License plate visible. Light, clearly red. Timestamp, clear. Denise studies it. The photo quality is poor. That could be anyone's BMW. Your license plate is clearly visible. XKJ-4729. That's registered to you. Someone could have stolen my plates. Did you report stolen plates to the police? No, because I only realized it might be stolen after I received this citation. Judge Caprio takes a slow breath. Miss Montgomery, you're an attorney. You know that's not how this works. If you're claiming stolen plates, you need a police report filed before the violation date. I'm claiming it's possible. That creates reasonable doubt. This isn't a criminal trial. This is a civil infraction. The standard is preponderance of evidence, not reasonable doubt. And the evidence clearly shows your vehicle ran a red light. Denise's voice rises. Your Honor, I drive through that intersection every day going to my office. I know that light. The yellow duration is too short. It doesn't give drivers adequate time to stop safely. The yellow light duration meets federal standards. 3.5 seconds. 3.5 seconds isn't enough for a driver going 40 miles an hour. The speed limit there is 35. Most people drive 40. Then most people are speeding. That doesn't change the red light violation. Hit like if you can see where this is going, because Denise is about to deploy the accusation that changes everything. Denise slaps her legal pad on the podium. Your Honor, I'm not paying this fine. It's unjust, it's discriminatory, and I refuse to be another statistic in a system designed to extract money from black professionals. Judge Caprio's expression hardens. Miss Montgomery, this has nothing to do with race. You ran a red light. The camera captured it. That's the beginning and end of this case. Of course you'd say that. You're not the one being targeted. Targeted? You broke a traffic law. The camera doesn't know your race, your profession, or your income. It photographs license plates. Denise leans forward. Let me ask you something, Your Honor. How many cases like this do you see from wealthy white neighborhoods versus black neighborhoods? I see cases from every neighborhood in Providence. The camera doesn't discriminate. But the placement does, and so does the enforcement. Miss Montgomery, if you have evidence of discriminatory camera placement, file a complaint with the City Council. But that doesn't change the fact that you ran this red light. I'm not paying it. Judge Caprio's voice becomes firm. Miss Montgomery, you don't have a choice. You either pay the fine, or I find you in contempt. Contempt? For what? For pointing out systemic racism in traffic enforcement? For refusing to accept the court's ruling. Denise's voice gets loud. This is exactly what I'm talking about. A black woman questions the system, and suddenly she's in contempt? If I were a white woman, you'd listen to my concerns. The courtroom erupts and whispers. Judge Caprio stands up. Miss Montgomery, your race has nothing to do with this ruling. Nothing. You ran a red light. You're trying to avoid accountability by making this about discrimination when it's about a traffic violation. Subscribe if you want to see how Judge Caprio handles being called a racist, because what happens next is absolutely explosive. Denise points at Judge Caprio. You're doing exactly what the system does, dismissing legitimate concerns about racial bias by claiming everything is fair and equal. Miss Montgomery, I'm not dismissing anything. I'm telling you that a traffic camera doesn't see race. It sees vehicles that violate traffic laws. And those cameras are disproportionately placed in black neighborhoods. They're placed at dangerous intersections, which happen to be in black neighborhoods. That's not a coincidence. Judge Caprio's voice rises for the first time. Miss Montgomery, you are conflating two separate issues. If you believe camera placement is discriminatory, challenge it through proper channels. But you cannot use that argument to escape a legitimate traffic citation. Denise's voice matches his volume. I absolutely can when the entire system is designed to criminalize black people for the same things white people do without consequences. That is not what's happening here. Then why am I being treated like a criminal for questioning a traffic ticket? You're not being treated like a criminal. You're being held accountable for running a red light, while you ignore my legitimate concerns about racial bias. Judge Caprio slams his hand on the bench. The courtroom goes silent. Miss Montgomery, I have been a judge for 32 years. I have presided over tens of thousands of cases. I have treated every defendant the same regardless of race, religion, gender, or economic status. I have black defendants in my courtroom every single day. I have white defendants, Hispanic defendants, Asian defendants, and I apply the same law to every single one. Denise's voice drips with sarcasm. How convenient that you don't see race. I didn't say I don't see race. I said race doesn't determine how I apply the law. But it determines how the law is enforced before cases even reach you. That may be true in some contexts, but this traffic camera doesn't care if you're black, white, or purple. It photographs vehicles that run red lights. And you're using that camera evidence to fine me $85 for something white drivers get away with every day? Comment accountability if you think Denise is avoiding responsibility by playing the race card. Judge Caprio walks around the bench, stands in front of Denise. Miss Montgomery, let me be very clear about something. Racism is real. Systemic racism in law enforcement is real. Discriminatory policing is real. I don't deny any of that. Denise looks surprised. But what you're doing right now is not fighting racism. You're using the language of civil rights to avoid an $85 traffic ticket, and that's offensive. Offensive? You're calling me offensive? Yes, because actual victims of racial discrimination deserve to have their claims taken seriously. When you cry racism over a traffic camera that photographs everyone equally, you diminish real cases of discrimination. Denise's face reddens. How dare you tell me what diminishes discrimination? You're a white man lecturing me about racism. I'm not lecturing you about racism. I'm telling you that this specific case is not about racism. It's about a red light you ran. In your opinion? In the opinion of the traffic camera that photographed your vehicle entering an intersection 1.8 seconds after the light turned red. Denise grabs her briefcase. I'm not standing here and letting you gaslight me about racial justice. Miss Montgomery, sit down. No, I'm leaving. This court is racist, this system is racist, and I'm filing a complaint. Miss Montgomery, if you walk out that door, I will hold you in contempt and issue a warrant for your arrest. Denise stops at the door. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you of the consequences of leaving a court hearing without permission. Let me guess, you don't threaten white defendants like this. Judge Caprio's voice becomes ice. Every defendant who tries to walk out of my courtroom gets the same warning. Race has nothing to do with it. Hit like right now if Judge Caprio is handling this perfectly. Denise turns around slowly. So now I'm being detained because I'm black. You're being required to stay because you're a defendant in a court proceeding. The same requirement applies to everyone. I want this on the record. Judge Frank Caprio is racially profiling me. The court reporter looks up, stunned. Judge Caprio's jaw tightens. Let it be on the record. And let it also be on the record that you ran a red light, refused to accept responsibility, and are now claiming racial discrimination to avoid an $85 fine. That's your narrative. My narrative is that I'm being targeted. Targeted by a camera that photographed your license plate? Targeted by a system that puts those cameras in black neighborhoods. Even if that were true, and I'm not, conceding it is, it doesn't change the fact that you ran this specific red light. Denise crosses her arms. I'm still not paying it. Judge Caprio returns to his bench. Fine, here's what's going to happen. Your fine for running the red light is $85. Because you've refused to accept the court's ruling and have repeatedly accused this court of racism without evidence, I'm adding a contempt charge. That's an additional $200. Denise's eyes widen. You're fining me for calling out racism? I'm fining you for contempt of court, for refusing to accept a lawful ruling, for attempting to leave a hearing without permission, and for making baseless accusations against this court. Baseless? Everything I said is true. You've provided zero evidence of racism in this proceeding. Zero evidence that the camera was placed discriminatorily. Zero evidence that you're being treated differently than any other defendant. You've simply asserted racism as a defense against accountability. Because it's true. Then prove it. Show me one white defendant who ran a red light on camera and didn't get a ticket. Show me data that this camera tickets black drivers at a higher rate than white drivers for the same violation. Show me anything other than your assertion. Denise has no answer. You can't, because this isn't about racism. It's about you running a red light and not wanting to pay the fine. Subscribe if you believe playing the race card to avoid responsibility is wrong. Judge Caprio continues. Miss Montgomery, you're an attorney. You know better than this. You know the difference between legitimate claims of discrimination and using race as a shield against accountability. I'm not using race as a shield. Yes, you are. And it's insulting to people who face actual discrimination. When a black man gets pulled over for driving while black, that's racism. When a black woman gets harsher sentencing than a white woman for the same crime, that's racism. When you get photographed by a camera running a red light and receive the same ticket as everyone else who runs that light, that's not racism. That's equality. Denise's voice cracks slightly. You don't understand what it's like to be constantly questioned, constantly targeted. You're right, I don't. And I'm not minimizing your experiences. But I am telling you that this traffic ticket is not part of that pattern. This is a straightforward violation with photographic evidence. He softens slightly. Miss Montgomery, if you have legitimate concerns about traffic camera placement, I encourage you to pursue them. Contact the ACLU. File a civil rights complaint. Gather data and present it to the City Council. Those are appropriate channels for systemic issues. But in this courtroom, today, you have to answer for running this red light. And race has nothing to do with that. Denise stands silently. Your total fine is now $285. $85 for the red light, $200 for contempt. You have 30 days to pay. Do you understand? Denise nods, defeated. And Miss Montgomery, one more thing. I hope you never face real racism in a courtroom. Because if you do, and you report it, people need to believe you. The way to ensure people believe legitimate claims is to not make illegitimate ones. Do you understand what I'm saying? Denise's voice is quiet. Yes, Your Honor. You're dismissed. Comment dismissed if you think Judge Caprio handled this perfectly. Denise walks to the clerk's office. Her confidence from earlier is gone. She pays the fine. $285. Far more than the original $85. Outside the courthouse, Denise sits in her BMW for a long time. She thinks about what the judge said, about real discrimination versus avoiding accountability, about crying wolf and being believed when it matters. She starts the car, drives to the intersection where she ran the red light, waits for the light to turn yellow, watches it turn red. This time, she stops. Denise Montgomery's story reminds us that racism is real, discrimination is real, but using those serious issues to avoid personal responsibility diminishes legitimate claims and hurts real victims. Judge Frank Caprio showed that you can acknowledge systemic racism while also holding individuals accountable for their actions. The two are not mutually exclusive. Here's the question. How do we fight real injustice while also accepting responsibility for our own choices? How do we have honest conversations about race without weaponizing it to avoid consequences? Denise learned that courtrooms demand truth. And the truth was, she ran a red light. Everything else was noise. Final question for you. Did Judge Caprio handle this correctly? Should he have been more sympathetic to her concerns? Or was he exactly right to separate systemic issues from individual accountability? Comment below. Share if you believe personal responsibility matters regardless of race. Like if Judge Caprio handled this with perfect balance. Subscribe to Judge Stories YT for more moments where truth matters more than excuses. Thanks for watching. See you next time.